Lieutenant Zix-Era adjusted her sensor arrays for the third time that cycle, her crystalline appendages clicking against the holographic interface of Coalition Deep Space Monitoring Station 47. Another routine scan, another empty sector. The Orion-Perseus Gap had been quiet for decades, serving as little more than a stellar desert between the bustling spaces of the Coalition's core worlds. Her partner, a methane-breathing Carthosian named Eth, drifted in his containment sphere beside her. 15 years, he burbled through the translator. 15 years since the humans lost their greatest ship in this sector. Zix-Era's bioluminescent patterns flickered in acknowledgement. The CSS Vienna's disappearance had marked the end of the Arcturus campaign, leaving both the Coalition and their human allies wondering if they'd ever truly understand what happened to the Supercarrier and its 15,000 crew members. The sensor array chimed. At first, Zix-Era dismissed it as another quantum echo, the kind that frequently haunted this region of space. But then the array chimed again, and again, and again. "Eighth," she chittered nervously, "are you seeing this?" The Carthosian's tentacles pressed against his containment sphere as he leaned forward. "Impossible. Those energy readings, they're off the scale." Space itself seemed to shiver, a ripple of distortion spreading across their visual feeds like waves on a pond. The distortion grew, stretching into a massive oval of swirling darkness that dwarfed anything Zix-Era had seen in her 8 years of monitoring duty. "Emergency protocol initiated," the station's AI announced calmly, alerting nearest Coalition patrol fleet. "Unknown spatial anomaly detected." The darkness birthed something massive. First came a bow that seemed to stretch for kilometers, its surface covered in patterns that pulsed with light in ways that made Zix-Era's inner eyes ache. The hull was both familiar and alien, the basic shape of a human warship, but transformed by technology that defied classification. Where there should have been standard armor plating, there were layers of what looked like living metal, shifting and flowing like liquid mercury. By the first ones, Eth whispered, his translator barely catching his words. "It's the Vienna." The Supercarrier emerged fully from the spatial rift, its vast bulk casting a shadow across the station's sensors. But it wasn't the same vessel that had vanished 15 years ago. The Vienna had been the pride of humanity's fleet then. Now it was something more. Iridescent patterns cascaded across its hull, reminiscent of neural networks or flowing data streams. Structures that seemed to exist in more than 3 dimensions dotted its surface, and its engine array pulsed with energy that registered on wavelengths the station's sensors couldn't properly categorize. Coalition Station 47, a chorus of harmonized voices transmitted across all frequencies simultaneously. "This is the CSS Vienna, returning from deep void deployment." Zix-Era felt her crystalline form vibrate in response to the transmission. The voices spoke as one, yet she could hear thousands of individual tones within the harmony. Each word carried weight, as if reality itself was bending to accommodate their communication. "Vienna," she responded, following first contact protocols while Eth frantically alerted the nearest patrol fleet. "You were declared lost with all hands 15 years ago. Please verify your identity." The response came with a burst of data that overwhelmed the station's primary systems. As their backup computers processed the information, Zix-Era and Eth watched in awe as holographic displays materialized around them, showing the Vienna's journey. The images were incomplete, fragmented, but what they revealed defied comprehension. Spaces between spaces, beings of pure geometry, battles fought across dimensions that shouldn't exist. "Identity verified," the station's AI announced, though its voice wavered with what almost sounded like uncertainty. "CSS Vienna recognition codes confirmed, but the ship's mass, energy signature, and technological composition are anomalous. No match in any known database." As 3 Coalition patrol ships emerged from hyperspace nearby, a single human voice broke from the chorus. "This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the CSS Vienna. We've returned with a warning. The void between realities is no longer empty, and what lives there has followed us home. Coalition Station 7's docking bay had never seemed so small. As the Vienna shuttle gracefully maneuvered through the energy shields, Chief Xenobiologist Dr. Mira Van noticed how the small craft's hull rippled like the surface of a liquid metal ocean. The shuttle was barely 30 meters long, yet its presence made the massive docking bay feel cramped, as if reality itself was adjusting to accommodate its existence. "Atmospheric analysis complete," announced the station's eye. The shuttle's interior matches standard human life support parameters, but there are anomalies in the particle readings. Dr. Van straightened her lab coat, aware that she was about to make first contact with something unprecedented. Behind her, a team of the Coalition's finest xenopsychologists and medical experts waited with an array of scanning equipment. The station's security detail stood at attention, though their posture suggested uncertainty about whether their weapons would make any difference if needed. The shuttle's door dissolved rather than opened. Admiral Sarah Chen stepped out first, and Dr. Van's breath caught in her throat. The Admiral moved with impossible grace, each step flowing into the next like water streaming over rocks. Her uniform, a standard Earth Fleet design, seemed to shift subtly, adapting its texture and color to the station's lighting. But it was her eyes that captured everyone's attention. They held depths that seemed to spiral inward forever, like looking into a hall of mirrors that reflected other dimensions. "Dr. Van," Chen spoke, her voice carrying harmonics that made the air vibrate pleasantly. "Thank you for accommodating us on such short notice. How did you know my name?" Van hadn't introduced herself yet. A slight smile played across Chen's lips. "We perceive information differently now. Your electromagnetic signature, brain patterns, and quantum state tell us more than any introduction could." Behind the Admiral, 11 other crew members emerged. They moved in perfect synchronization, their movements suggesting a shared consciousness rather than individual coordination. Each bore the same transformed appearance as their commander, human, yet fundamentally altered in ways that defied conventional biology. Dr. Van activated her scanning equipment and immediately wished she hadn't. The readings made no sense. The crew's DNA appeared to be rewriting itself in real time, their cellular structure existing in multiple quantum states simultaneously. Their neural patterns registered on wavelengths that shouldn't have been possible for organic beings. "You're afraid," stated one of the crew members, a young woman whose name tag identified her as Lieutenant Santos. "Don't be. We're still human. We've just evolved to perceive reality as it truly exists." The station's chief of security, a veteran Taurian named Kor, stepped forward. His species was known for their empathic abilities, but he staggered back as soon as he came within range of the Vienna's crew. "By the stellar winds," he gasped, his 4 eyes widening. "Their minds, they're like looking into the heart of a galaxy." Admiral Chen turned to address the assembled coalition personnel. "We understand your concern. Humanity has always been defined by its ability to adapt, to push boundaries. What you see before you is not an abandonment of our humanity, but its ultimate expression." Dr. Van found her scientific curiosity overriding her initial fear. "The transformation, was it voluntary?" "Necessary," Chen corrected. "In the void between realities, unchanged humans couldn't survive. The entities we encountered there showed us how to evolve. But they chose us specifically, Doctor. Out of all the species they'd encountered, humanity possessed a unique trait. We can change fundamentally while retaining our essential nature." The Admiral raised her hand, and the air around it seemed to bend. A holographic display materialized, showing images that hurt to look at, geometric patterns that existed in more dimensions than the human mind was meant to process. "We spent subjective centuries in the void," Chen continued, "learning, evolving, preparing, because something is coming, something that even our benefactors fear. And humanity's transformed state may be the only thing standing between it and the end of everything you know." In that moment, As the station's sensors registered energy spikes from the Vienna's crew that rivaled small stars, Dr. Van realized she wasn't just documenting a scientific phenomenon. She was witnessing the next chapter in human evolution, and possibly the key to the galaxy's survival. The Coalition Assembly Chamber erupted into chaos as the holographic display showed the Vienna phase through a meteor field, as if it were passing through mist. High Ambassador Telix of the Centaurian Confederation slammed his ceremonial staff against the chamber floor, its crystalline head ringing out above the commotion. "This is unprecedented," he declared, his bioluminescent crests flaring with agitation. "The humans have introduced technology that violates fundamental laws of physics. The balance of power—" "Balance," interrupted Admiral Chen's harmonized voice. Her hologram stood in the center of the chamber, the air around her image rippling with quantum distortions. "What we face cares nothing for your political balance, Ambassador." The Vienna's latest demonstration had sent shockwaves through Coalition space. Minutes earlier, they had watched the Supercarrier deploy what Chen called a reality anchor to stabilize a forming quantum fracture near the Arcturus border. The ship's hull had transformed, sprouting structures that existed in geometries that made several assembly members physically ill to observe. From her position in the observer's gallery, Dr. Van watched the mathematical models of the Vienna's energy output scroll across her tablet. Each reading suggested capabilities that made the ship less a vessel of war and more an expression of natural law itself. "The Arcturus hegemony is already mobilizing their reserve fleets," reported General Ktari of Coalition Intelligence, his hologram flickering beside Chen's. "Our deep space arrays have detected movement from at least 8 of their ancient warship storage facilities." "Let them come," said Lieutenant Santos, materializing beside her admiral. The young officer's presence caused nearby data streams to reorganize themselves into more efficient patterns. The Vienna alone could handle their entire fleet now. The assembly chamber grew silent at her casual declaration, not because it was boasting, but because every analysis suggested it was simple fact. "This is exactly what concerns us," said Premier Knox of the Pleiades Confederation, his quantum state body shifting through various probability patterns. "Humanity has always been unpredictable. Now you possess power that rivals that of stellar engineering. How can we be certain?" A warning klaxon cut through the chamber. General Ktari's form shifted as he accessed real-time data feeds. "We've lost contact with Research Station Omega-17 in the Perseus arm. Complete quantum signature disappearance." Before anyone could respond, the Vienna's crew members present in the chamber turned as one, their eyes focused on something beyond normal space. Admiral Chen's expression tightened. "They're here earlier than we predicted. Showing you now." The chamber's holographic systems, augmented by the Vienna crew's abilities, projected a view that made several assembly members recoil. Research Station Omega-17 hadn't been destroyed. It had been removed from reality itself. In its place was a void that didn't merely absorb light, but consumed the very concepts of space and time around it. "This is what followed us home," Chen explained, her voice carrying the weight of centuries spent fighting these entities. "The Void Dwellers showed us how to evolve, because they knew their ancient enemies would eventually find a way into our reality. Humanity's transformation wasn't about power, it was about survival. For all of us." The chamber erupted again, but this time the panic held a different tone. Ambassador Telix's bioluminescence had shifted from agitation to fear. How do we fight something that unmakes reality itself?" Chen gestured, and the Vienna appeared in the projection. The Supercarrier's hull flowed like quicksilver, its structures rearranging into configurations that channeled energies from dimensions beyond normal space. Where its fields touched the void, reality stabilized, forced back into proper alignment. "You don't fight it," Chen said, her crew's voices harmonizing with an authority born of terrible experience. "You transcend it. The Void Dwellers chose humanity because we can guide that transcendence. The question isn't whether to trust us with this power, it's whether you're ready to evolve beyond what you think is possible." The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity hadn't just returned with a transformed ship. They had come back as harbingers of change that would reshape the very foundation of civilization itself. The council chamber's lighting dimmed as Admiral Chen activated what she called a memory sphere. The air shimmered, and suddenly the room wasn't a room anymore. The Coalition Council members found themselves floating in what appeared to be the space between spaces, where physics itself seemed more like a suggestion than a law. This is where we spent our first century. Chen's voice echoed through their minds, the memory as much felt as seen. Though in your timeline, only 15 years passed. Dr. Van watched as reality twisted around them. The memory showed the Vienna's first encounter with the Void Dwellers, beings of pure geometry and thought, existing in dimensions that the human mind was never meant to comprehend. Yet somehow, the Vienna's crew had not only survived the encounter but learned from it. They chose us, Lieutenant Santos explained, her form shifting between her human appearance and something far more complex. Out of all the species they'd encountered across multiple realities, humanity possessed a unique trait. Our consciousness could expand without fragmenting. The memory shifted, showing the Vienna's transformation. Its hull didn't just change, it evolved, adapted, learned. The crew underwent a similar metamorphosis, their bodies and minds expanding to perceive and interact with higher dimensions while maintaining their fundamental human nature. High Ambassador Telix raised his crystalline appendages in a gesture of confusion. But why? Why show humanity such favor? The memory sphere darkened, and a new scene emerged. The council members witnessed vast entities moving through the void between realities, beings that made the Void Dwellers look simple by comparison. Where they passed, entire dimensions collapsed, reality itself unraveling in their wake. The Entropy Weavers, Chen named them, her voice heavy with the weight of countless battles. The Void Dwellers' ancient enemy. They consume reality itself, breaking down the barriers between dimensions until nothing remains but chaos. Premier Knox's quantum form fluctuated with distress. And they follow you now. You led them to our reality. No, Chen corrected. They were always coming. The Void Dwellers gave us the means to fight them because humanity's adaptability makes us perfect warriors against chaos. Where other species would break under the strain of transcendence, we bend and grow stronger. The memory sphere showed a battle now, the Vienna engaging one of the smaller Entropy Weavers. The Supercarrier's transformed hull channeled energies that shouldn't exist, its crew operating as a single consciousness to weave reality back together where the entity tried to unravel it. Watch closely, Santos instructed as the scene played out. This is key to understanding what we've become. The council members observed in awe as the Vienna's crew demonstrated their evolution. Each member functioned as both individual and part of a greater whole, their transformed minds able to process information across multiple dimensions simultaneously. Yet in every action, their essential humanity shone through. Their creativity, their determination, their ability to find solutions where none seemed possible. The Void Dwellers modified our bodies and expanded our minds, Chen explained, but they couldn't have done it if humanity hadn't already possessed the potential. We can perceive reality as it truly is, existing in multiple states simultaneously, yet we retain our human consciousness. That's what makes us unique. That's what makes us dangerous to the Entropy Weavers. The memory sphere shifted one final time, showing the vast array of Entropy Weavers approaching Coalition space. The sight was both beautiful and terrifying. Mathematics given form, chaos made manifest. You have a choice, Chen addressed the council as the memory sphere faded. You can reject what we've become, maintain your current form of existence, and face extinction, or you can trust us to guide you through your own evolution. The Void Dwellers chose humanity to be the bridge between what is and what could be. We offer you the same gift they gave us, but time is running out. As the chamber's normal lighting returned, Dr. Van noticed something extraordinary. The council members, representing species that had often been at odds, all wore the same expression, one of awe mixed with the dawning realization that the universe was far stranger and more wonderful than they had ever imagined. The Coalition science vessel Stellar Seeker drifted at the edge of the Perseus Arm, its sensors prodding the space where research station Omega-17 had vanished. Dr. Van stood on the bridge, watching as her instruments tried to make sense of readings that defied conventional physics. "Another anomaly forming," announced the ship's eye. 3 light minutes from our position and expanding rapidly. Captain Rax of the Stellar Seeker chittered nervously, his insectoid features reflecting the strange lights that danced across their screens. "All hands, prepare for emergency translation. If we see anything like what happened to Omega-17. Wait." Dr. Van's voice cut through the bridge chatter. "Look at these quantum signatures. They're singing." The void itself seemed to ripple, and the CSS Vienna materialized beside them, its transformed hull gleaming with patterns that made reality shiver. The Supercarrier dwarfed the science vessel, its presence both reassuring and terrifying. "Stellar Seeker, maintain your position." Admiral Chen's harmonized voice came through on all frequencies. "You're about to witness humanity's first line of defense against the entropy weavers. Watch, learn, and remember. This is what evolution looks like." The anomaly burst open like a blister in spacetime. What emerged defied description. A being of pure mathematics and broken geometry, its form extending into dimensions that hurt to perceive. Where it passed, reality began to unravel, spacetime itself breaking down into its component possibilities. The Vienna's response was immediate and beautiful. The Supercarrier's hull transformed, flowing like liquid metal as it reconfigured itself into shapes that somehow countered the entropy weaver's chaos. Structures that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously extended from the ship, creating a lattice of order that forced reality back into alignment. "Recording everything," Dr. Van whispered, her instruments capturing data that would revolutionize their understanding of physics. The Vienna isn't just fighting it. They're rewriting the laws of reality faster than the entropy weaver can break them. Through the Stellar Seeker's enhanced viewing screens, they watched the Vienna's crew in action. Each member moved in perfect synchronization, their consciousness linked across dimensions as they wielded energies that their old human forms could never have contained. Lieutenant Santos appeared on their bridge, her presence causing the ship's computers to spontaneously optimize themselves. "The entropy weaver is attempting to initiate a cascade failure," Santos explained, her voice carrying harmonics that made the air vibrate. "It would collapse this entire sector into quantum foam. Watch how we counter it." The Vienna's transformed crew demonstrated their mastery of their new abilities. Where the entropy weaver created chaos, they wove order. Where it broke down the barriers between dimensions, they reinforced them with new geometries that were somehow more real than reality itself. Captain Rax's compound eyes reflected the impossible battle. By the first light, is this what humanity has become? "This is what humanity was always meant to be," Santos replied. "We were chosen because we could adapt to this level of existence without losing our essential nature. Where other species would fragment under the pressure of perceiving reality as it truly is, we learn and grow stronger." The battle reached its crescendo as the Vienna executed a maneuver that seemed to bend spacetime itself. The Supercarrier's hull briefly existed in all possible configurations simultaneously before settling on one that channeled power from dimensions beyond normal space. The energy release was controlled, precise, and devastating to the entropy weaver. The cosmic entity recoiled, its mathematical form disrupted by the Vienna's attack. As it retreated into the void between realities, Admiral Chen's voice echoed through space. "That was merely a scout," she announced to the watching coalition vessels. "The main force approaches, and they will not retreat so easily. Now you understand what we face, and why humanity had to evolve to face it." Dr. Van looked at her readings again, understanding finally clicking into place. The Vienna hadn't just received new technology from the Void Dwellers. They had become something new. humanity's next step into a universe far stranger and more wonderful than anyone had imagined. The vast amphitheater aboard the Vienna hummed with energies that existed in dimensions beyond normal space. Representatives from 27 coalition species gathered to witness what Admiral Chen called the next step. Dr. Van stood among them, her instruments recording everything while her mind struggled to process what she was seeing. The Supercarrier's interior had transformed into a living laboratory of reality itself. Corridors shifted and reformed based on the quantum states of those walking through them. Walls displayed mathematical equations that seemed to solve themselves, describing physics that hadn't existed until humanity dreamed them into being. The process cannot be reversed, Chen explained, her form flickering between human shape and something far more complex. Once you perceive reality as it truly is, you can never go back to seeing it the old way. But evolution was never meant to be reversible. Lieutenant Santos gestured, and a holographic display materialized in the center of the amphitheater. It showed the defense network the Vienna had created, a web of higher dimensional anchors that stabilized reality against the entropy weaver's attempts to unravel it. But the network had gaps, vulnerabilities that only transformed beings could fill. Your species have all reached the limit of conventional evolution, Santos said, her voice carrying harmonics that made every translator in the room synchronize to a higher level of efficiency. The Void Dwellers showed us the next step because humanity could handle it. Now we offer the same gift to you. High Ambassador Telek stepped forward, his crystalline form refracting the strange energies around them. Show us what it means to transcend. The Vienna's crew moved in perfect synchronization, their consciousness linked across multiple dimensions as they activated what they called the Awakening Chamber. The device wasn't really a chamber at all, but rather a space where reality's normal rules were gently suspended, allowing consciousness to expand beyond its original boundaries. Watch carefully, Chen instructed as a volunteer from each coalition species entered the chamber. The process affects each species differently, but the fundamental transformation is the same. Your minds will learn to perceive and exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Dr. Van's instruments captured the moment of transformation. The chamber filled with light that seemed to bend through dimensions that shouldn't exist. The volunteers' forms blurred, their consciousness expanding faster than their bodies could adapt. For a moment, it seemed like they would break under the strain. Then something remarkable happened. The Centaurian representatives' bioluminescence began pulsing in patterns that encoded mathematical theorems about the nature of reality itself. The Carthosians' tentacles moved through space-time, as if it were water, manipulating quantum states with casual ease. Even the crystalline, Telex's form reconfigured itself into geometries that could process information across multiple dimensions. Remarkable, Santos observed, her transformed senses analyzing the process. Each species adapts differently, finding their own path to transcendence, just as the Void Dwellers predicted. But the transformation wasn't without cost. Several volunteers struggled, their consciousness threatening to fragment under the pressure of perceiving reality's true nature. That's when the Vienna's crew demonstrated why humanity had been chosen as guides. Moving with practiced grace, they extended their linked consciousness to support the struggling volunteers. Their transformed human minds served as bridges, helping other species adapt to their expanded awareness while maintaining their essential nature. This is why we were chosen, Chen explained as the process stabilized. Not because we were strongest or smartest, but because we could adapt without breaking, change without losing ourselves. Humanity's gift isn't just surviving transcendence, it's helping others survive it too. Dr. Van watched as the transformed volunteers began to explore their new capabilities. Each species brought something unique to the higher dimensions, new ways of perceiving, new methods of manipulating reality itself. Together with humanity's transformed warriors, they represented something unprecedented. A coalition that could face the entropy weavers on their own terms. The main force approaches, Chen announced, her words echoing across dimensions. Now we face them not as separate species struggling to comprehend the incomprehensible, but as a unified force dedicated to preserving reality itself. Above them, through viewports that showed spectrums beyond normal space, the first signs of the Entropy Weaver's main assault began to appear. The battle for reality itself was about to begin. Dr. Van stood in the Vienna's neural core, watching streams of consciousness flow through conduits that existed in more dimensions than she could count. The transformed crew members moved through the space like dancers in a cosmic ballet, their minds linked across vast distances as they coordinated the coalition's evolution. The neural patterns are stabilizing, Lieutenant Santos reported, her form shifting between states of matter as she processed data from 1,000 transformation chambers across coalition space. 87% success rate on voluntary transformations. Admiral Chen's presence filled the room, her consciousness extending through the Vienna's enhanced systems, and the other 13%. Unable to maintain cognitive coherence during the expansion of consciousness, Dr. Van answered, her instruments tracking the results. Their minds, fractured when exposed to higher dimensional awareness. But we're learning why humans succeed where others fail. She brought up a display showing neural maps of various species during transformation. The patterns told a story that was both beautiful and profound. Where other species' minds tried to categorize and contain their expanded awareness, human consciousness adapted, flowed, embraced the impossible while somehow maintaining its essential structure. "Watch this," Santos said, directing their attention to a new transformation attempt. Through the Vienna's enhanced sensors, they observed as a group of coalition volunteers entered the process. Among them was High Ambassador Telix, his crystalline form already humming with anticipation. As the transformation energies washed over them, each being began to change. But this time was different. The Vienna's crew had learned from earlier attempts. They wove their consciousness around the volunteers like a protective cocoon, showing them how to adapt rather than resist, how to flow rather than break. "It's working," Dr. Van breathed, watching the neural patterns stabilize. They're learning to think like humans while remaining themselves. Chen's form coalesced into something more recognizably human, though still flickering with higher dimensional energies. That's the key breakthrough. The Void Dwellers chose humanity because our minds are paradoxes. We can accept the impossible while remaining anchored to our core identity. We're teaching them our cognitive flexibility. Telix emerged from the transformation chamber, his crystalline body now refracting light from dimensions that didn't exist in normal space. The experience, it's beyond description. We see reality as energy, as probability, as infinite possibility. And that's just the beginning, Santos said, her voice carrying harmonics that made the air itself resonate. The transformed coalition fleet is nearly ready. The Vienna will serve as the coordination hub for our unified consciousness during the battle. Through windows that looked out on more than just normal space, they could see the coalition's transformed ships gathering. Each vessel had been modified with technology derived from the Vienna's evolution, their hulls rippling with energy patterns that stabilized reality against the Entropy Weaver's influence. But it was the crews that had changed the most. Beings that had once been limited to three-dimensional existence now perceived and operated across multiple planes of reality. Their minds linked together in ways that would have been impossible before, guided and stabilized by the Vienna's transformed humans. "The main force of Entropy Weaver's approaches," Chen announced, her consciousness extending through the fleet. "Our sensors detect them unraveling reality across 12 dimensions. Conventional weapons would be useless. But we're not conventional anymore," Dr. Van said, understanding finally clicking into place. "The Void Dwellers didn't just give us the means to fight. They gave us the means to transcend the very limits of what we thought was possible." The Vienna's neural core pulsed with power as the transformed fleet synchronized their consciousness. Through their shared awareness, they could feel the Entropy Weavers approaching, vast beings of mathematics and broken geometry, coming to unmake everything they held dear. But where once such a sight would have broken their minds, now they saw it with clarity and purpose. Humanity had evolved to face this threat, and in doing so, had helped an entire coalition of species evolve with them. They were no longer just separate beings fighting for survival. They had become something new, something more. Together, they were reality's immune system, awakening just in time to face its greatest threat. Reality shuddered as the entropy weavers tore through the dimensional barriers, their vast forms distorting space-time like ripples in a cosmic pond. The transformed coalition fleet hung in formation around the Vienna, their hulls gleaming with energies that defied conventional physics. Through their linked consciousness, every crew member could perceive the truth of what approached. Beams of pure mathematics and broken geometry come to unmake everything that existed. Admiral Chen's consciousness extended through the fleet, her transformed mind serving as the anchor point for thousands of evolved beings. All ships, synchronize your reality fields. Remember your training. We are the wall between order and chaos. Dr. Van watched from the Vienna's neural core as Lieutenant Santos coordinated the fleet's defensive patterns. The young officer's consciousness flickered through multiple dimensions, weaving the ship's fields together into something that was more than the sum of its parts. "They're attempting to initiate universal collapse," Santos reported, her voice carrying harmonics that made reality itself resonate. Multiple points of quantum destabilization detected. The entropy weavers struck first, their attack rippling across dimensions that shouldn't exist. Where their influence touched, reality began to unravel, probability collapsing into chaos. But this time, they faced something they had never encountered before, a unified consciousness of multiple species, guided by humanity's unique ability to adapt without breaking. The Vienna led the response, its transformed hull flowing like liquid starlight as it reconfigured into shapes that somehow forced reality back into alignment. The coalition fleet moved in perfect synchronization, each ship's crew contributing their species' unique perspective to the battle. "Remarkable," Telex observed, his crystalline form refracting energies from a dozen dimensions. "The Centaurians perceive quantum fluctuations we cannot see. The Carthosians manipulate probability itself. And humanity. We bind it all together." Chen completed the thought, her consciousness extending to support a group of ships whose crews were struggling with the cosmic scale of combat. Evolution isn't about becoming something else. It's about becoming more of what you truly are. The battle reached a crescendo as the largest entropy weaver, a beam that dwarfed solar systems, attempted to tear open the fabric of space-time itself. The Vienna's response was immediate and beautiful. The Supercarrier's transformed crew channeled power through dimensions that had no names, their human consciousness expanded but unbroken. "All ships," Chen commanded, her voice carrying across the unified fleet consciousness, "execute pattern transcendence." The coalition fleet moved as one, their ships forming a lattice of higher dimensional geometry that somehow made sense despite defying traditional physics. Energy flowed between them, guided by the Vienna's crew, shaped by the unique perspectives of each transformed species. Dr. Van's instruments captured the moment as reality itself seemed to hold its breath. The entropy weaver's assault met the coalition's defense, and for a moment, it seemed like everything would collapse into quantum foam. Then something extraordinary happened. The unified consciousness of the fleet, anchored by humanity's adaptable minds, didn't just resist the chaos, they rewrote the rules of reality around it. Where the entropy weavers sought to unravel existence, the coalition fleet created new patterns of order, more complex and beautiful than what had existed before. "They're retreating," Santos announced, tracking the cosmic entities as they recoiled from something they had never encountered before. Evolution they couldn't unmake, change they couldn't control. The Vienna's neural core pulsed with triumph as the last entropy weaver vanished back into the void between realities. But everyone connected to the unified consciousness knew this wasn't just a victory, it was a beginning. "We've proved something today," Chen said, her form stabilizing into something that bridged the gap between human and transcendent. "Evolution isn't about becoming more powerful. It's about becoming more of what makes each of us unique." Humanity's gift wasn't just surviving transcendence. It was showing others how to transcend without losing themselves. As the Coalition fleet regrouped, their transformed crews still linked in a consciousness that spanned species and dimensions, Dr. Van understood the true significance of what they had achieved. They had faced the ultimate entropy and emerged not just victorious, but transformed. Not into something alien, but into something wonderfully, impossibly, fundamentally themselves. The age of separation was over. The age of unified transcendence had begun.